Okay, Jay, Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Now let's discuss a processor architecture unit 18, primarily the Flynn's taxonomy of how parallel processor systems, different variations of parallel processing exist. Now, before we progress with this, we need to understand a few basic terms that are used in these diagrams. First of all, we see this term written here as IS. What this IS is, basically it refers to the instruction stream. Then we have something referred to as the DS, which is the data stream. And then we have the memory module, the shared memory. All of these are mentioned here, okay? Now, basically what instruction stream is that, okay, first of all, let's try to understand what's happening here, that each instruction is divided into two parts, the actual opcode and the data that it's using. So we are familiar with this, discussed many times before. The instruction is, that's basically how it's divided into. And we also know that the instructional part or the opcode part is basically fed to the control unit, and the data is later on used by the accumulator registers, and which is linked with the arithmetic and logic unit. Okay, basically the program is already in the memory, and it is ready for execution. A computer which can have multiple processes running in parallel, and these are the different variations that can exist in that particular scenario. First of all, we have these processes will have an instruction stream. As you can see here, this instruction stream is unidirectional. It only starts from my memory module. This is my memory module. MM stands for memory module. This is where the instructions and data are stored. The instructional part is sent on this instructional stream, which is a unidirectional stream. From my memory module, first it will reach the control unit. As you know, the control unit is responsible for decoding instructions. The control unit would decode this instruction, forward it to the processing unit, where it will be executed. This processing unit relies on your working collaboration with the arithmetic and logic unit to carry out the execution of this instruction. Now, basically, the processor unit, when it's starting to execute, it will require the data. Obviously, it doesn't need it before that. Right now, the control unit does not need the data for decoding instruction. The processing unit does need it. If it requires any arithmetic logic operations, it will do it. And obviously, it would need the operands now. In that case, this data stream is, you see, the data will be transferred on the data stream. So the instruction of the opcode portion of that instruction is transferred to the instruction stream, and the operand portion of that data is sent to the data stream. But you notice that this data stream is bidirectional. You see here, bidirectional. The reason it's bidirectional is that during execution, I may want to write some data back as well. In that case, I will rely on this data stream to send data back to the memory. So I'm not only fetching operand from the memory, I will be, remember in pipelining, we talked about write back process in which the data is supposed to be written back to the memory. So basically the write back process is carried out on this channel, and the data is written back in reverse back in the memory module. So this is basically how these are different basic components of your processor that will be considered here. Okay, now what is the memory module? As mentioned before, it could be a cache where instructions are residing, or it could be range of instructions, memory locations in my RAM. Basically, it's just a memory unit where it holds instructions and data. Then another term we see here is shared memory. Shared memory means that we have many memory modules that are placed together, and collectively the term assigned to these multiple memory modules is shared memory. Now, this first representation we see here is known as the single instruction and single data stream. Now, the way this happens is that I am only running a single instruction. This whole processor runs one instruction at a time. And the data that's provided to this processor is also carried out there's only one piece of data being processed at one time. So there's only one instruction making use of only one piece of data. And that single data stream is used for transferring that one piece of data. Now, to understand this, let's look at this diagram. Let's just say I have an array of 4 elements. 1, 2, 3, 4. I've got 4 elements in an array. The single instruction that I want to carry out is I want to multiply the individual elements by 2. That is the instruction I want to carry out. So the way single instruction and single data stream works here is that in the first go, in the first cycle, my processor will first perform this instruction on this single data. You see, after the first instruction is executed, this has turned into 2. After the second instruction is executed, this part has become 4. See, it's not happening simultaneously. First, this happens. First, this is multiplied by 2, then this is multiplied by 2. This happens in the second phase. And obviously, in the next phase, this will become 6. And finally, in the fourth cycle, this will become 8. So as you notice here, I have executed my desired task, which was multiplying all of these instructions by 2. But the way it was handled, instruction is only one, of course, I'm multiplying by 2. But what I'm doing is I'm handling one data item at a time because I only have one data stream. So that's how my first time I do only one, then the other one in the second cycle, then the third one, and then eventually the fourth one, resulting to this rather slow processing. Now, another approach is single instruction using multiple data streams. Now, basically, if you want to look at this, remember this, we were multiplying by 2. Now, this is the same array. My instruction is still the same. What happens is that that same instruction is simultaneously provided by different data using different data streams. So at the same time, my same instruction is processing different data, resulting in this result output differently. So in one instruction is executed almost, because I have 4, let's just say if I have 4 channels, 4 data streams, it is capable of processing all 4 data simultaneously. Therefore, somewhat, but the instruction is the same. Remember, different parts. This data is divided into 4 parts, and my instruction, same instruction, is handling different parts of the same data at the same time. So index position 1 is handled by this data stream. Index position 2 is handled here, 3 is handled here, and 4 is handled here. So based on that, different parts of the same data are processed simultaneously using the same instruction. The instruction has not changed. So as you can see here, since data is divided into different parts and is being provided separately, I have multiple data streams for that. And my shared memory will have, possibly all data, obviously I don't have one memory module. Since I have multiple data streams, I'm assuming that they're being fetched from different memories. So different parts of the data, different datas, related data are being fetched from different memory modules. Again, memory module doesn't mean that they're different memories altogether. Memory module can simply mean that there's simple different address locations. So can it not be possible that I have an array which has contiguous data values in separate addresses? Can these values not be stored in separate addresses? Yes, they can. And each memory module can represent a different address. So obviously these values are being fetched from different memory modules. So when I talk about different memory modules, what I mean for this example is that these values stored in a different address, this is a different address, this is a different address, this one different. So these are, I'm referring to this memory module in this context as addresses. So each value is fetched from different memory modules, or you can say different addresses. They're being placed on this data stream provided to this execution unit. But before that, that single instruction has to be sent to the control unit where it's decoded. That single instruction is then executed by different processing units using different data items. And this is how you're executing the same instruction on different parts of the same data in parallel. Now, the problem with this approach is that in this example, you can see that there's no sort of link between these data. They're not related, they're not dependent on each other, and they can be effectively carried out in parallel. But if, say, for example, these are dependent values, Say, for example, the calculation of this part of the data depends on the result of this. In that case, parallelism cannot happen, because I have to first wait on this, the result provided by this, the outcome of which will be used here. And if I'm carrying out all of these data, if I'm processing all of these data streams at the same time, that will not happen, because this will have to wait for the result produced by this data section. In that case, parallelism won't exist there. But usually, if you have this kind of data, the data items not dependent on each other, the results not dependent on each other, in which case you can effectively carry out SIMD, SIMD application over here, SIMD implementation of instruction, data level parallelism here. Okay, as mentioned in the example, this SIMD is also known as array processing. Most importantly, we saw in the example that we're basically simply processing an array, and that too in parallel. All index positions are accessed in parallel. Now let's talk about the MIST approach. MIST is something that doesn't exist in any architecture, is basically a theoretical implementation. But if it were to be used, the best possible scenario that it can be used in is for a fault tolerant system. Now, basically what an MIST means that I have multiple instructions. They're not the same instruction. They're different instruction streams. Each instruction stream is carrying out a separate instruction. We have different instruction streams and operating on the same data. Different instruction streams from different processing units, different control units operating on the same data. Different control units, same data. Now, what does that mean? That means that I can carry out different instructions using the same data set. It doesn't exist on any actual machine. But if it were to exist, this method would be a good method. It would be a good way to create a fault tolerant system. Now, what is a fault tolerant system? Assume that I have multiple processors. I have 2, 3, 4 different processors. And each processor is basically running a separate instruction. Basically, what happens is that the same data will be supplied to different processors. And effectively, let's just say those processors are executing the same instruction as well. Not the same instruction stream, but let's just say, just for example, they're executing the same instruction. Now, what that does is that on the same data set, I will be running different processors running the same instruction on the same data set. The result will be considered only the result produced by a processor will only be considered if most of the processors had produced the same result. So let's just say I have different processors that are multiplying two numbers together for two data items, 4 and 3. Now let's just say processor 1 generated a value 12, processor 2 generated a value 12, processor 3 generated a value 13. Now processor 4 generated 12. Now I will ignore the value generated by 13. I will consider the ones that were generated, the majority generated. That will be the actual value. Because of this, if a processor is generating a wrong value, it can be highlighted and ignored. So this is what fault tolerance is, that if some fault in calculation has been identified, it is detected and terminated right then and there. And how is this multiple instruction in a single data stream? Most importantly, I've got multiple processors. They are carrying even though it's not meant for executing the same instruction, but we are just thinking of a possible application where this can be used. Multiple processors executing instructions on their own. They're separate instructions. Coincidentally, they are the same instruction because we want to see which one is producing the same result. Data set has to be the same. Now we do that, and the result to be used here will be the one that was generated by majority of the processors. But apart from that, there is no other practical application for MIST. Finally, we come on the MIMD, in which I've got multiple instructions, and none of these instructions are related to each other. They're separate instructions. And I've got multiple data streams as well. So none of the data is linked with each other instruction either. So basically, this is the complete parallelism here. Each processor is carrying out its own instruction using its own data set. And these data sets are not related, these instructions or data sets are not related to other processors, because of which there is no dependency and there is a higher throughput. Basically, why? Because each processor is executing a separate instruction, resulting in higher completion of instructions. Now, basically what happens here is that I've got a memory module that is feeding an instruction to the control unit where it's decoded, and then it comes for execution in the processing unit. When the execution comes, the data stream, its separate own dedicated data stream, sends data to the processing unit, and the result is written back in the memory. And you can see here, we have multiple processes doing the same thing, and they are relying on different memory modules, different addresses altogether, executing different instructions separately using different data streams and resulting writing results different from each other. So basically, this is the true level of parallelism, multiple instructions on multiple data stream. Now, if I, for example, relying on shared memory. So basically, if I am relying on the same memory that is divided into, say, for example, if I'm relying on different memory modules, like I'm doing right here, if I'm relying on different memory modules like this is known as a loosely coupled MIMD, as each MIMD has its own memory. In fact, if you look at it, if you look closely, this one separate loosely coupled MIMD looks like a single SISD. So in a sense, you can say that this is loosely coupled MIMD is actually multiple SISD, because each component looks like this. However, if I have a shared memory module for all processors, then that means that's a tightly coupled memory module, tightly coupled MIMD, in which all processing units will be relying on the same memory module. Again, it may cause a little confusion. What do you mean same memory module? How is that possible? Well, again, a memory module is not just one RAM. It is range of addresses, it could be a cache with many addresses, could be a RAM with many addresses. So this range of addresses can make up one memory module. And if I have different instructions on each address, why cannot, and different data on each addresses, why can't they be executed separately by different processors as well? So that can be done. But the only difference here is that versus like loosely coupled and tightly coupled is that each processor is relying on its own memory module in loosely coupled, whereas each processor will be sharing a memory module in tightly coupled. But instructions are separate, data streams are separate in both of them. Okay. Then finally, coming to the parallel computing systems. An example of parallel computing system is known as a massively parallel system that are used for highly complex calculations. They were once known as supercomputers, as opposed to conventional computers that support buses between different processors. Now, let's just say we talk about cores. One core, let's just say, for example, I have a quad core system. A quad core system will look something like this, assuming that we've got different processors. By the way, we have got this core right here. We got one core right here, one core right here. Okay, what does a core mean? Core means a separate processor, but technically, what does it mean? A core is something that has its own control unit, it has its own arithmetic logic unit, and it has its own set of registers. They're not linked with each other. So let's just say I have a quad core system, quad core arrangement. So basically what happens here is that these cores should be able to communicate with each other. So that means there should be communication channels that allow for direct communication between all cores. And it will look something like this. As you can see here, all cores are directly connected with each other. Now, the problem with this setup is that, okay, so quad core have got these communication channels, but what if I am dealing with an octa core? Now, octa core means that I've got 8 cores. Now, 8 cores, of course, if I have increased the cores number, I will have even more communication channels, allowing for unrestricted direct communication with all processors. So there are more communication channels, which results into its own set of problems. Now, assuming that, let's just say, for example, you are assigned a task and you assign that you complete that task in, say, 10 hours. It requires you to do 10 hours. Your boss thinks that you're working too hard and gives you 9 people to help you out. So he says that since you've got 9 people to help you out, that means a total of 10 people, because of which now you should be able to complete the same task in 1 hour as opposed to requiring 10 hours. Ideally speaking, that is the case. Yes, if you are working alone and it requires you 10 hours, now since you're working with 10 people, it should require you 1 hour. But that's not the case. It's not always that simple. Ideally, that's the case. But what really happens is that now you're wasting some time in communication as well. Let's just say initially when those 9 people come on board, you have to spend some time in briefing them about what you're working on, and once they are briefed about the task, they will start working, and then during the execution of the process, you'll have to keep in touch with them. So what's your progress? What's your process? Process A, person B, what is your progress? Why aren't you working? Why are you working so slow? Where did you go? So and sort of, you're wasting time in communication. That communication time lost accounts for something. So you don't necessarily bring the time from 10 hours to 1 hour, but maybe you're right about around the range of maybe 3 hours, somewhat. It has reduced time, no doubt, but not as expected. And the same thing goes here with the processors. These processors, even though they're separate, they're carrying out their own thing, they're carrying out their own instructions. They do rely on inter-processor communication. This is a huge field in computer sciences, inter-process communication. There has to be some communication between these processors. Now, this communication is carried out over these communication channels. These channels and the time lost in this communication has to be accounted for. So it doesn't matter if I add more, it does actually does matter that if I add more cores, this addition of more cores will result that I have more processes to carry out more tasks, thereby allowing me to complete more work in unit time. There's more throughput, but there's also some time being wasted on inter-processor communication that has to be accounted for. And most importantly, when you have more cores, that means you have more communication channels, really causing a greater impact over the overall communication time being used. So this has to be considered. Now, what we're talking about here is that in the conventional parallel processing system, these cores, these processors communicate with each other using parallel cables. These parallel high-speed connections being established within processors, these physical cables, very tiny, very small length cables, but they allow for communication between these processors. But when we come into the domain of, say, massively parallel computers, these channels that communicate between these processes are replaced by something else. Instead of having buses, they have multiple instead of having processors, even processors communicating with buses are replaced by their complete computers communicating through a network, some network. Now essentially what happens is that this network, possibly spread over a very wide area, allows for many computers to work together on the same task. So this is how massively parallel computers have taken the world by storm. They can be even spread over the entire world and use internet communication to communicate with each other. Or they could be in, for example, a building and use Ethernet cabling or fiber optic cabling to communicate with each other, but they're separate computers. Instead of being separate processors, they are separate computers altogether with their own heavy processing powers and memories and architecture, and they're simply working together to work on a common task. So this is what how parallel computers, especially your massively parallel computers, work. Instead of processors communicating through buses, these are computers working through a network, communicating through a network. Another type of multi-computer system is known as cluster computing, which supports very large number of computers working together in a network, possibly spread around a very large geographical area. So this is what parallel systems are.